Every morning, millions of seniors over 60 peel open a banana and call it a healthy breakfast. I'm about to show you why that single habit may be quietly working against your blood sugar every single night while you sleep, and what to eat instead that a growing body of clinical research says can stabilize your glucose levels in ways your doctor has probably never mentioned. My name is Dr. Paul. I spent over 20 years operating on the hearts of patients whose conditions began not in the arteries, not in the chest, but in blood sugar numbers that were slightly, quietly, consistently off for years before anyone took them seriously. I have stood in operating rooms looking at the consequences of what happens when glucose dysregulation goes unaddressed in older adults, and I am telling you, what you eat in the evening matters more than almost any medication you are likely taking right now for this problem. Now, I am not going to tell you the name of the fruit yet. I know that is frustrating. But if I told you right now, most of you would nod, maybe write it down, and then forget everything else I said. What I need you to understand first is why this problem exists, how it actually works inside a 60-plus-year-old body that is fundamentally different from a 40-year-old body, and why the banana has been so badly misrepresented as a safe choice. Once you understand the mechanism, the solution will not just make sense, it will stick with you. Let me tell you about a woman named Dorothy. She was 67 years old when she came into my clinic with her daughter. Dorothy was doing everything right, according to everyone who had ever given her health advice. She walked 30 minutes every day. She had cut out red meat. She took her metformin faithfully every evening at 8 o'clock. And every morning, before her walk, she ate a banana. Her doctor had told her fruit was fine. Natural sugar, after all. Nothing to worry about. Dorothy's fasting blood glucose had been creeping upward for 3 years. Her last A1C came back at 7.4. Her primary care physician adjusted her metformin dose. Her endocrinologist added a second medication. Nobody asked what she was eating. Nobody asked about timing. Nobody asked whether the banana she was eating before a morning walk on a stomach that had been fasting for 9 hours was actually one of the worst possible choices for her particular physiology at her particular stage of life. What Dorothy's doctors were not measuring, and what the standard diabetic care panel almost never measures, was something called the dawn phenomenon, combined with reactive glucose variability. Here is what was happening inside Dorothy's body every single morning, and the banana was making it dramatically worse. Between roughly 3 and 8 in the morning, the human body, every human body, releases a surge of hormones. Cortisol, growth hormone, glucagon. This is an ancient survival mechanism. Your body is preparing you to wake up and move. One of the things these hormones do is signal your liver to release stored glucose into your bloodstream. It is called hepatic glucose output. In a young, metabolically healthy person, the pancreas notices this glucose rise and releases a matching burst of insulin that neutralizes it. Blood sugar stays relatively flat. In a person over 60 with any degree of insulin resistance, which, by the way, includes the majority of adults in that age group whether they have been diagnosed with anything or not, the insulin response is delayed and blunted. The glucose from the liver floods into the bloodstream and the insulin response cannot keep up. Fasting blood sugar rises. Now Dorothy adds a banana to that scenario, a ripe banana. The kind most people eat, the spotty yellow one that tastes sweet and pleasant, has a glycemic index of around 51 and a glycemic load that hits the bloodstream meaningfully, particularly for an older adult whose first-phase insulin secretion is compromised. The fructose component of that banana does not require insulin for initial uptake, which sounds like a benefit. But fructose is processed almost exclusively in the liver. And the liver of a 67-year-old with mild insulin resistance is not processing fructose the way a 25-year-old's liver does. Excess fructose in a metabolically challenged liver converts to triglycerides. It drives hepatic fat accumulation. It increases uric acid levels, which independently worsen insulin signaling. And it stacks directly on top of the dawn phenomenon glucose release that was already pushing Dorothy's numbers up. Her doctor was treating a number. Nobody was addressing the system that was producing that number. Dorothy's morning glucose readings, taken before her banana, were consistently between 112 and 118. After 6 months of the protocol I'm going to share with you, her morning fasting readings dropped to between 92 and 98. Her A1C fell from 7.4 to 6.8 without any change to her medication. Her endocrinologist was puzzled. He did not ask what she had changed. He simply noted the improvement and told her to keep doing whatever she was doing. Let me explain the core biology that makes this possible, because once you understand this, you will never look at your evening eating choices the same way again. There is a compound that most people have never heard of called Myo-Inositol. It is found in certain foods in concentrations high enough to actually influence how your cells respond to insulin. Myo-Inositol is what researchers call an insulin second messenger. When insulin binds to a receptor on the surface of your cell, that receptor does not immediately open a door and let glucose in. Instead, it sends a signal through a relay chain inside the cell. Myo-Inositol is a critical component of that relay chain. Think of insulin as a key, and the cell's insulin receptor as a lock. But the lock has a mechanism behind it, a series of internal gears. Myo-Inositol is one of those gears. Without adequate myo-inositol activity, the key turns the lock, but the door barely opens. Glucose cannot enter the cell efficiently. It stays in the bloodstream. Your pancreas reads high blood sugar and releases more insulin. Your cells, already partially resistant, respond even less effectively. The cycle deepens. Now here is why this matters specifically for adults over 60. Your body's ability to synthesize myo-inositol internally declines with age. Simultaneously, kidney function, which influences inositol reabsorption, becomes less efficient. Some of the most common medications given to older adults, certain diuretics for example, actively deplete circulating inositol levels. Most people over 60 are running on a system where one of the most important molecular gears in insulin signaling is chronically low. And nobody is testing for it. It is not on a standard metabolic panel. Your doctor almost certainly does not know your inositol status. I want you to drop a comment below right now. Just type your age and your most recent fasting blood glucose number. If you do not know that number, type your age and the word unknown. I read these comments. What you share helps me understand who is watching this and shapes the information I bring to you each week. The fruit I am about to tell you about contains the highest naturally occurring concentration of dietary myo-inositol of any commonly available fruit in the world. It is not exotic. You can find it at nearly any grocery store. It costs less per serving than a banana. But because it cannot be patented, because there is no pharmaceutical version of it, because the profit margin on information like this is essentially zero for the companies that fund nutrition research, it has remained almost invisible in mainstream dietary guidance. The fruit is kiwi. I want to be specific because not all kiwi is equal, and this distinction matters enormously. The variety with the most well-documented blood glucose effects is the standard green kiwi, Actinidia deliciosa, the one with the fuzzy brown skin and the bright green flesh. A single medium green kiwi contains approximately 130 milligrams of myo-inositol. To put that in perspective, a banana contains roughly 18 milligrams. An apple contains around 24. Green kiwi delivers roughly 5 to 7 times more of this compound than the fruits most commonly recommended to people managing blood sugar. Now let me tell you about a man named Raymond. Raymond was 64, recently retired, and had been told by his doctor that he was pre-diabetic with a fasting glucose of 108. Raymond was a practical man. He did not want more medications. He had watched his father take 4 different diabetes medications for 15 years and still lose 2 toes. Raymond came to me asking not for a prescription, but for a reason. He wanted to understand what was actually happening inside his body and what he could actually do about it without simply managing numbers forever while the underlying condition worsened. Raymond started the protocol. 2 medium green kiwis eaten within 1 hour of going to bed, skin included. I will explain that in a moment. He did not change his diet dramatically. He kept his exercise routine the same. He reduced his banana intake. 90 days later, his fasting glucose had dropped to 94. His endocrinologist confirmed the improvement and asked what had changed. Raymond told him. The endocrinologist said, and I want you to notice this carefully, that he had never heard of Myo-Inositol in that context, that it was not something covered in his training, and that he was not going to advise against it, but that Raymond should monitor carefully. That doctor was not dismissing Raymond. He was telling the truth. Nutritional biochemistry receives a fraction of the curriculum time in medical school that pharmacology does. The system does not teach what it cannot prescribe. Then there was a woman named Constance, 69 years old, former schoolteacher, absolutely convinced she was already eating kiwi the right way, because she bought kiwi juice at the health food store. Constance had been drinking processed kiwi juice for 4 months and had seen no meaningful change in her numbers. I need to pause here and explain why, because this is critical. Commercial kiwi juice, almost every variety you will find, is pasteurized. The pasteurization process that extends shelf life destroys a substantial portion of the heat-sensitive vitamin C, degrades many of the polyphenolic compounds, and most importantly, dramatically reduces the bioavailable inositol concentration. What remains after processing is largely fructose and water, with some residual micronutrients. Constance was not eating kiwi. She was drinking a mildly nutritious sugar solution and believing she was getting the same benefit as whole fruit. She was not. The moment Constance switched to 2 whole green kiwis eaten before bed each evening, including eating a portion of the skin, which I am going to explain, her 60-day fasting glucose average dropped from 114 to 99. One number crossed below 100. She described it as the first genuinely hopeful moment she had felt in 3 years of managing her prediabetes. Let me now give you the full mechanism, because there are 3 distinct pathways by which whole green kiwi works on blood sugar overnight, and understanding all 3 is what will make this stick. Pathway 1 is the myo-inositol mechanism I already described, the restoration of insulin signaling efficiency at the cellular level. This operates throughout the night after consumption, working during the hours your cells are most in need of efficient glucose management. The pre-dawn window, when the body's natural hormone release is putting pressure on glucose levels. Pathway 2 is the fiber architecture of kiwi, which is unlike almost any other fruit. Green kiwi contains a unique profile of both soluble and insoluble fiber. The soluble fiber, particularly a pectin-like compound in the flesh, forms a gel in the digestive system that physically slows glucose absorption from any subsequent meal or snack. When you eat kiwi in the evening, this gel matrix is still partially active in your gut through the night and into the morning. The fasting glucose reading you get when you wake up is being influenced by what your digestive system was doing while you slept. This is not a theory. There are published studies showing that evening kiwi consumption specifically reduces the speed at which glucose enters the bloodstream during the overnight fasting period. Pathway 3 is what I consider the most underappreciated mechanism, and it involves the kiwi skin. Most people discard it. That is a significant mistake. The skin of green kiwi contains concentrated amounts of a class of compounds called flavonoids and carotenoids, as well as a prebiotic fiber called arabinoxylan. These compounds do 2 things that directly affect blood sugar regulation. First, they feed specific strains of gut bacteria, particularly Akkermansia muciniphila, that are directly associated with improved insulin sensitivity and reduced fasting glucose. Second, the arabinoxylan fiber in the skin is fermented by gut bacteria into short-chain fatty acids, particularly butyrate, which signal directly to the liver to reduce overnight hepatic glucose output, the very mechanism behind the dawn phenomenon I described earlier. To summarize that pathway in plain language, eating the kiwi skin feeds gut bacteria that send chemical signals telling your liver to release less glucose during the night. If Dorothy had been eating kiwi skin, Her liver's overnight glucose dump, which was pushing her fasting numbers up every single morning, would have been receiving a biological break signal. I need you to pause here and think about whether any of this has been explained to you by anyone in a clinical setting. Type one word in the comments right now. If you have diabetes or prediabetes and no healthcare provider has ever discussed inositol or gut bacteria's role in overnight glucose regulation with you, type the word never. If this is information you have heard before, type knew it. I want to understand how far ahead of or behind standard care this information is for the people watching this. Now I want to address why this information does not travel through standard medical channels, because I know some of you are wondering that right now. Your doctor is not withholding this from you out of negligence or malice. The training pipeline that produces physicians is heavily shaped by where research funding goes. A pharmaceutical company invests billions to bring a glucose-lowering drug to market. That investment is recoverable because the drug is patentable and can be sold at a price that generates returns. Nobody invests billions to study whether kiwi eaten at night reduces fasting glucose in seniors, because even if the results are overwhelmingly positive, nobody can own kiwi. The financial incentive to generate that research, to fund the medical education that disseminates it, to train physicians to discuss it, it simply does not exist at the scale it needs to. This is not a conspiracy. It is just economics. And the people who pay the price for that economic reality are patients like Dorothy, Raymond, and Constance, who followed every instruction they were given and still watched their numbers go in the wrong direction. Before I give you the exact protocol, if you are finding this video valuable, please subscribe to this channel right now and hit the thumbs up. It takes you 2 seconds. It tells the algorithm that this information deserves to reach more seniors who need it. And if you have a parent, a sibling, a friend over 60 who is managing blood sugar and eating bananas every morning thinking they are making a healthy choice, please share this video with them directly. You may be doing something genuinely important for their health by doing so. Here is the protocol, and I want to be precise. Eat 2 medium green kiwis within 60 minutes of going to bed, not an hour before dinner, not with breakfast. The timing is important because the overnight window, roughly 10 p.m. to 8 a.m., is when the dawn phenomenon does its damage and when the gut microbiome is most actively processing prebiotic fiber in ways that influence hepatic glucose output. Eating kiwi at breakfast does not position its compounds to intercept the overnight glucose release that is driving most fasting blood sugar numbers in older adults. Regarding the skin, wash the kiwi thoroughly under running water. You do not need to scrub aggressively. Slice the kiwi, but do not peel it. Eat the flesh and the skin together. The skin has a slight fuzz and a mildly bitter edge. Some people adapt to it within a few days. Others prefer to blend the whole kiwi, skin included, with a small amount of water to make a simple preparation that is easier to consume. If you are blending, do not add sweeteners of any kind. Do not add other high-sugar fruits. Keep it simple. Do not use kiwi juice. Do not use dried kiwi. Do not use kiwi supplements unless they are verified whole fruit extracts, cold processed, with no added sugar, standardized for inositol content. If you cannot find a product with those specifications, the whole fruit is always superior. Regarding quantity, 2 medium kiwis is the range supported by the most consistent research data in adults over 60. 1 kiwi provides benefit, but less consistently measurable overnight glucose effect. 3 or more kiwis in one sitting introduces a fructose load that begins to offset the benefits, particularly in individuals with liver fat accumulation. 2 is the number. Regarding the banana, I am not telling you to never eat a banana. What I am telling you is that a ripe banana eaten first thing in the morning on top of a dawn phenomenon glucose surge is one of the least optimal food choices for a 60-plus-year-old managing any degree of insulin resistance. If you enjoy bananas, eat them earlier in the afternoon. Eat them less ripe. A slightly green banana has a meaningfully lower glycemic index and considerably more resistant starch, which behaves more like fiber than sugar. but stop leading your morning with it on an already glucose-loaded system. Now, I know some of you are already forming questions, so let me answer the ones I hear most often. The first question is whether this will interact with diabetes medication. The honest answer is that Myo-Inositol can enhance insulin sensitivity, which means if you are on medications that lower blood glucose, metformin, sulfonylureas, insulin itself, and you begin experiencing significantly improved glucose response from this protocol, your medication dose may become more than your body needs. That is a good problem. It is also a problem that requires communication with your prescribing physician. Do not stop or reduce any medication on your own. Monitor your glucose numbers more frequently when you begin this protocol. If your numbers drop significantly, and I mean fasting readings consistently below 85 when you were previously running over 100, bring those readings to your doctor and have a conversation about whether your current dosing still reflects your body's needs. The second question is how long before you see a change. For most people over 60, the first meaningful shift in fasting glucose readings appears between 3 and 6 weeks of consistent nightly consumption. The gut microbiome changes that drive the overnight hepatic glucose reduction take slightly longer. Most of the research suggests 8 to 12 weeks for full microbiome adaptation. Do not judge the protocol by the first 2 weeks. Give it 90 days and track your fasting glucose each morning before eating or drinking anything other than water. The third question is whether organic matters. Kiwi is one of the lower pesticide fruits on standard testing panels. It has a thick skin that you are now going to eat, so washing thoroughly matters more than organic certification for most people. If you have access to organic and it fits your budget, use it. If not, thorough washing is sufficient. The fourth question I hear is whether this works if you already have full type 2 diabetes as opposed to prediabetes. The Myo-Inositol mechanism functions regardless of diagnosis category. The clinical evidence for inositol in type 2 diabetes is actually quite robust. There are peer-reviewed trials showing meaningful A1C reductions in type 2 diabetic populations consuming inositol at the levels available in whole kiwi. What I will say is that the more advanced the insulin resistance, the more important the gut microbiome support component becomes. The arabinoxylin fiber in the kiwi skin becomes even more critical, not less, as insulin resistance deepens. Before I close, I want to come back to Dorothy. 67 years old, 3 years of creeping glucose numbers, 2 medication adjustments, 1 banana every morning. 90 days after beginning the nightly kiwi protocol, 2 whole green kiwis, skin included, within an hour of bed. Her morning fasting readings had normalized. Her A1C had dropped. Her daughter called me not to report a dramatic reversal, but to say something quieter and more meaningful. She said her mother had stopped being scared every morning. That the anxiety of watching the number go up every year, the feeling of doing everything right and still losing ground, that had lifted. That is what this information can do when it reaches the right people at the right time. Here is your final assignment before this video ends. Drop a comment below and tell me one of 3 things. Write "starting tonight" if you are going to begin the nightly kiwi protocol after watching this. Write "already tried it" if kiwi has been part of your routine and you want to tell me what you noticed. Or write "have questions" if there is something specific about your situation, a medication, a condition, a particular glucose pattern that you want me to address. I read every comment. Your responses directly shape what I cover next. What I have shown you today is one piece of a much larger picture about how aging physiology changes the rules of blood sugar management in ways that standard clinical guidelines have not fully caught up with. There are other compounds, other timing strategies, other overlooked mechanisms that are working against seniors who are doing everything their doctors have told them to do. That information belongs to you, not locked inside journal articles that require a subscription and a biochemistry degree to interpret. If this video reached you at the right moment, do not close this tab without subscribing. And there is something I need you to watch next. It directly follows what we covered today. Most people managing blood sugar focus entirely on what they eat. Almost nobody addresses when their cells are most and least capable of responding to insulin throughout a 24-hour cycle. And that timing information alone can change the way your current diet, your current medications, your current exercise routine actually performs. That video is ready for you right now. Click it before you forget. Your body is running a system that is decades old and operating in conditions it was never fully designed for. Understanding that system is the most important thing you can do for the years ahead of you.